Good evening everyone, and welcome to another question of the week. This time asked by Signal Hunter 2290. To paraphrase, they want to know the differences between the operating system for naturals and the operating system for coordinators. Plus, if there's a difference between the natural operating system that was developed by the Alliance and the natural operating system that was developed by ORP. So, to begin, let's have a look at why naturals weren't able to pilot mobile suits in the first place, and why this is also a little bit of an oversimplification. The anime itself gives us a very simple answer.
Trying to pilot that mobile suit? You're in way over your head, natural.
Naturals were inferior, so they just weren't able to pilot mobile suits because they weren't good enough. And we do see some examples of what would happen if a natural did try to pilot a coordinator-only mobile suit. In episode 19, Sai tries piloting the Strike to prove a point. He wants to show that he's just as good as Kira, but of course, he ends up proving the exact opposite point. After taking only a few steps, he does the mobile suit equivalent of stalling a car, and the Strike drops down to the floor. Still, I do want to say that I feel like that's actually still a pretty commendable achievement. Like, Sai is just the average natural, and he didn't get any special training to pilot a mobile suit. So, I feel like this scene might actually show that a sufficiently trained and skilled natural pilot could pilot a mobile suit with a coordinator operating system. Later on in the series then, we see the training session of the ORP pilots with their M1 Astrays. And at this point in the series, they still don't have a true natural operating system, but they are like working towards it. They're moving, but they're extremely clunky and probably wouldn't be all that great in combat. But still, they are actually piloting them to a commendable degree. On the battlefield, commendable is of course not going to be enough. So for most naturals, that's probably how they're going to be piloting a mobile suit with a coordinator operating system. But there are a few exceptions. One character that's often cited as being able to pilot a mobile suit with a coordinator operating system is Reina Imelia. The problem with this claim is that it's never officially stated, it's just hinted at. 1, she is one of the Alliance's top pilots. 2, her skills are set to surpass even those of coordinator pilots. And 3, she is the instructor of the pilots for the original 5 Gundams. So because of all of this, it's assumed that she would be able to pilot the original Gundams in their original state, which was basically something that only a coordinator would be able to pilot, and therefore she should be able to pilot a coordinator operating system mobile suit. Another natural pilot then that I believe would be able to pilot a coordinator operating mobile suit is Sven Kalba-Young. His most famous machine was the Strike Noir, a Gundam that was supposedly so difficult to pilot that it was almost exclusively given to extended pilots. And for the sake of this video, an extended pilot is basically equivalent to a coordinator. And then we have 2 really unexpected cases, Raoul Crusay and Ray Zaburel. Now, we all know that they are clones of Alda Flaga, who is a natural, but because they're part of Zaft, I think we all just automatically assumed that even though they're clones of a natural, that they must have undergone some kind of, coordinator enhancement things. But no, apparently they really are just clones of Alda Flaga and are considered to be naturals. It even says so right here in the manual of the Master Grade Providence Gundam. Even though he is a part of Zaft, he is a natural. That's just wild. So this then kind of confirms it that a sufficiently skilled natural should be able to pilot a coordinator mobile suit. And it also makes sense when you think about it, because the genes that make up a natural and a coordinator are still the same genes. It's just that coordinators had theirs selected for them to be as good as they can be. It's basically like naturals are playing free to play and coordinators are playing pay to win and get all of the good stuff from the get-go. But so, how do we now go about making an operating system for the average natural? And here it seems that Orb and the Alliance did have their own unique approach to making this work. So first, we have the Orb way, and it seems like they were focusing really hard on making their natural operating system just as flexible as the original coordinator operating system. And as I mentioned before, in the anime, they kinda showed us by having the mobile suits doing martial arts. The first time we see this, again, they're not particularly fast, but they do seem to be doing it manually, and they are making progress. Due to circumstances then, Kira ends up at Orb and helps them perfect this operating system. And what he did, I'll let him explain himself.
Wow, this is awesome!
I've created a new quantum subroutine, increased the relative speed of the synapse fusing by approximately 40%, and redesigned the molecular structure of the ion pumps to make the whole system more compatible with the reflexes of the average natural.
I just can't get over how quickly you did all that.
It sounds less like automation and more like making the operating system work around the brain of a natural. However, other sources do lean more towards automation. For example, in Gundam Seed Astray B, we see a training exercise taking place shortly after Kira upgraded the operating system. And here, we see that it wasn't quite there yet. During the test, the M1 Astrays would sometimes move quite erratically, and sometimes even strike random martial arts poses in the middle of combat. So, unless they've got some melee buttons like in Megas XLR, there does seem to be some level of automation going on. Also, the training exercise is against Gai Murakimo in his Astray Blue frame, and the mock battle goes so poorly that he sees the performance of the M1 Astrays as an insult to his own Blue frame. Which is then why he decides to help with finalizing the operating system, finally bringing the M1 Astrays up to true combat readiness. Next up, we have the Alliance's way of doing things. And here, there's no doubt about it. They went for automation all the way. They completed their natural operating system mainly thanks to the combat data from the strike. The unit itself might not have made it to Alaska, but I'm pretty sure they had backups which were stored on the Archangel, which did make it to Alaska. And it's also speculated that, allegedly, some data from Orb's natural operating system fell into their hands. But anyways, the main idea here was to have the computer supplement the pilot's movements based on that combat data, so it sounds like the Alliance was using a lot more automation than Orb was doing. Which in practice might have meant that Alliance mobile suits were easier to pilot, but also more predictable, which could then have been a problem against more skilled coordinator ace pilots. And according to the Gundam Seed novelization, this was apparently the case. Kira points out that it's relatively easy to spot a mobile suit using a natural operating system. I don't think they expand upon this, but it's probably something like a natural mobile suit is always going to have a very samey reaction, like they're always going to do the same pre-programmed thing, whereas a coordinator mobile suit will do something different every single time, and it's going to be completely different. And here it's worth pointing out that this statement does apply to both daggers and M1 Astrays, again making it sound like the M1 Astrays were also using automation, just like the daggers. So when you see Gundam Seed reusing animation for Orb and Alliance mobile suits, it's not laziness, it's canon. But with the Alliance, it wasn't just the operating system that was made more natural friendly, the cockpit also got overhauled. On screen, you can see the Strike's cockpit on the left and the Strike Dagger's cockpit on the right. There's a bunch of small changes, but the biggest change was no doubt the joysticks on the side consoles. It's unfortunately not mentioned how they made a mobile suit easier to control, but I mean, since they overhauled it, I guess they did. And this design was also carried over to future mobile suits, including future Alliance Gundams, like the Raider, the Forbidden, and the Calamity. And that's how Naturals eventually got the pilot mobile suits. The Alliance way and the Orb way. So yeah, if you have a question you want me to answer in a future Question of the Week video, you can leave that down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.